Builder! What is this? This is a high-capacity Sony NPF battery that allows you to charge it with its built-in USB charging port. How much does it cost? Approximately $25 if you bought one battery, but you do get a discount if you buy up to 4 batteries. Is able to charge in 6 hours and 45 minutes through the USB charging port, which basically means if I buy this $25 USB charging block from Amazon, I'm going to be able to charge 6 of these batteries with one charger. Is it actually a high-capacity battery? Yes and no. Depending on what device you're plugging it into, if it doesn't require a crazy amount of voltage, then yes, you are going to get an extra amount of performance life out of your LED panels, monitors, what have you. However, if it needs higher voltage to operate, then it's actually going to die out approximately 3/4 of the way of the battery, which is actually pretty much the exact same as the PowerExtra. Do I still recommend this battery? Yes. The charging feature alone is worth it to me than the high capacity. Done. Roll that intro. What's up everybody, you're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. So today we're gonna find out whether or not this high capacity Sony NPF battery with a built-in USB charging port is gonna be the right battery for you and your portable setup. Now the main reason I bought a bunch of these batteries is because ever since PowerExtra, my favorite NPF battery of choice, discontinued that model where they removed the DC input that allowed you to charge a bunch of these batteries off of one charger, it got me thinking. It really wasn't about the outputs. The outputs were nice, but it was because I could charge the battery so quickly and easily and cheaply where I don't have to buy a whole bunch of charging blocks at $30 a piece. That was the major selling point for me for this battery. So when I came across this battery made by Kastar or Kastar or however you want to call it, and they said that the built-in USB charging port is going to be able to charge at 5 volts and 2 amps, and it's rated at a much higher capacity at 8,700 milliamps versus the PowerExtra's 6,600 milliamps. It got me thinking, well, if this thing can charge at that voltage and that amperage, then this might actually work quite well. So without further ado, let's check the test results. So here in the testing setup, I have one battery that is being charged by your iPhone's charging block, which is only rated at 1 amp. And then on the other battery, I have it charging from a much more powerful port that is technically rated at 2.4 amps. But since the input is only able to go up to 2 amps, that's exactly how much it's drawing. Now, with no surprise, the 1 amp is taking forever to charge, and I'm gonna round it up and say 10 hours, which is actually not that bad considering the fact that this is a high capacity battery. But the one that's charging at 2 amps was able to charge all the way, and I'm gonna round it up and say about 7 hours. Which is awesome because again, this is a high capacity battery. So the fact that it's able to charge in about 7 hours, that is amazing. Now, here's the one thing to note. The 1 amp Apple charger, it got really noticeably hot and I was blowing a fan at it because I didn't want it to burn out and I still wanted to see just how long it took. Now the reason it's getting really hot is because the battery is capable of drawing 2 amps, but it was only receiving the maximum 1 amp from the Apple charger. So that means that Apple charger is working at 100% for 10 hours. And that's something that I just don't want to do to it. So in the grand scheme of things, be very careful. Whatever you're plugging this into, I would highly suggest that you make sure that it's outputting at least 2 amps instead of 1 amp. That way it won't burn out. So these test results have me super excited because now that I know it can charge super quickly, the next thing is to get a charger that allows me to charge a bunch of these batteries at once. And sure enough, Amazon actually sells one that's really awesome. It's only $25. It has 6 ports and it's rated at 60 watts. Now, this is something you have to be very careful. The reason that I am getting this one specifically is because when it says it's at 60 watts, then that means each of these 6 ports is getting the full 5 volts and 2 amps. Sometimes the marketing people will get a little wordy and they're actually gonna hide certain things from you. So if you take a normal small charging block, and it's got 2 ports on it. They're gonna say that yes, it can charge at 5 volts and 2 amps, but that's only if you plug one USB device in that needs to draw that 2 amps. If you put in 2, then sometimes these cheaper ones, it's actually only gonna let each device have 5 volts and 1 amps, and therefore you're not getting a full charge. So because Amazon is being straightforward and they're saying 6 ports at 60 watts total power, then I know that each of those ports are getting 5 volts and 2 amps. And the math is this. How you can determine watts is you take the voltage, multiply it by the current, so 5 times 2 is 10, therefore that's where that 60 watt number is coming from. Now, because this is a high capacity battery rated at 8700 milliamp hours versus the PowerExtra that's rated at 6600 milliamp hours, I wanted to see just how much extra battery life do I get out of my LED panels. Now, the first one up is the GVM bi-colored 520S, and I was able to get a nice substantial boost, getting at approximately 5 hours and 45 minutes of battery life compared to the PowerExtra, which is just a little over 4 hours. So that is awesome right there. And that's where it stops. The GVM50RS, the RGB panel that I recently reviewed, the Cine RGB panel that I recently reviewed, the Kastar gave pretty much the exact same results as the PowerExtra. How can that be? I'm gonna try to explain this as best as I can, so sorry if this goes completely over your head. Basically, these RGB lights look like they require much more voltage to actually operate. So how a battery works, especially with the Sony NPF, when it gets charged all the way, it's actually not just shooting out 7.2 volts constantly. It's actually rated much higher, probably about 8 volts or 8.2 volts. And as it slowly drains, it's going to get down to that 7.2, and it might even dip just a little bit under, I'm not sure. But basically that's how it works. So the GVM RGB panel and the Cine panel, I'm guessing requires you to be at either 7.2 or 7.4 or something. It requires you to be at a very specific point, otherwise it's gonna cut off and turn off. And this makes sense because when the lights eventually died in my test and I took the batteries off, I noticed that there was still 25% or at least one light bar left. I don't know if it's actually 25%, 20, or it could be 15, I don't know. But there was power left and I was able to power other panels with it. So that being said, within the first 75% of the battery, which is approximately 6,600 milliamp hours, you're getting enough power and it's able to basically do its thing. So depending on how you want to look at it, in terms of these LED panels, they are able to operate for about 6,000 milliamp hours and then it's gonna cut off, which is really close to the PowerExtras. So in my eyes, I'm guessing the PowerExtras have either a much better battery management chip or the cells are just a lot better and are able to pump out a constant voltage all the way to the point where it dries and dies. And the Kastars are only good up to a certain point. Now, depending on how you want to look at this, it could be a pro and it could be a con, or maybe you don't care. For me, I don't actually care because I'm actually in it more for how fast this thing can charge and how cheaply I can charge all these batteries with a very, very basic $25 USB block. That is what is important to me. So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line for this one's actually kind of hard because there's 2 viewpoints, and depending on which viewpoint you think is the most important can sway your decision whether or not this battery is the right thing for you. So I'm gonna break it down real quick. Number 1, because it has a USB port, and it's able to charge at a very high rate, I'm able to get a nice cheap $25 60 watt 6 ports of USB charging port basically, and I'm going to be able to charge 6 of these batteries within 7 hours, which is awesome compared to me having to buy 3 of the dual bays that are $30 a piece. So that's $90 I would have to spend if I wanted to do the exact same thing, but also charge at a slower rate. So that's viewpoint number 1. Viewpoint number 2, even though they say it's a high capacity battery, it was weird in the fact that up to about 6,500 milliamps, so basically about 3/4 of that battery is where it actually operates at a very high voltage, and I was getting the exact same battery life out of the more power hungry RGB LED panels. So in that case, you might be saying to yourself, well, it's not truly high capacity because there's 25% of the battery that's not being used. And again, that is definitely something. Maybe you do want a very high quality NPF battery that's going to squeeze out that extra hour of performance for you depending on your application. So those are the two viewpoints. Now, for me personally, the viewpoint that I'm gonna go with that's most important is actually the first one. My ability to charge a whole bunch of these batteries for only 25 bucks. Now, this is where it can get a little weird, so I'm gonna try to explain it as clearly as possible. So basically what I'm telling you is I'm foregoing the high capacity quality of the battery that's going to squeeze out that extra hour. For me, I don't feel like I'm losing anything because I've been using the PowerExtra battery, so I'm already used to the idea that that is how much life I'm gonna get out of these panels with those two batteries. What I'm not used to is if I decided to go with a battery that did not have a very high charging port on it, and I end up having to buy $30 a piece just to charge two of these batteries, and they're gonna take anywhere up to 10 to 12 hours, maybe even longer, just to charge. That is the part where I'm not used to. But let's do a future, like see into the future thing a little bit. So hear me out. If you have 24 Sony NPF batteries, okay? If you had 24 of this Kastar batteries that can do the USB charging port thing, then you would only need 4 of those Amazon basic 6-port blocks, which is approximately $100. If you bought a bunch of dual bay chargers to charge 24 Sony NPF batteries, you're looking at spending $360 on just the charging blocks alone to basically charge all your batteries. So when you're looking at it in the long run and you're starting to see how many Sony NPF batteries you actually need, then it's going to be very apparent. The Kastar ability to charge through USB is going to be the winner in your pocket financially. Now you might be asking yourself, well, would I even need 24 of these NPF batteries? Like, why would I need 24? I don't know this for sure. I'm only going off of what I think is going to happen. In terms of LED technology, LED chips are getting more and more efficient in terms of how much power they require, and they're also getting brighter and brighter using less and less power. So as LED panels and technology continues, you can bet that they're basically just going to keep using Sony NPF batteries, and you're going to use a lot of them because why not? For you to have such powerful LED panels that are portable to you, you know, that's awesome. So in my eyes, I know I'm going to be needing more and more Sony NPF batteries as I continue developing my lighting kit, especially with these portable LEDs. And when that time comes, I'm going to wish that I have a bunch of these Kastar Sony NPF batteries that I can charge with these really tiny USB block chargers, than having 12 of those dual bays all plugged in, drawing and charging all these batteries. And hey, that is it for this week, everybody. I know that was a very, very heavy one filled with reasoning, but that's why we're here, because we're always learning. So again, if any of my reasonings have made any influence at all in terms of your purchasing decisions, I would really appreciate it if you check out my Amazon affiliate links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you. It just gives me a little compensation so I can continue making videos like this for you. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. And until then, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.